David Manske, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, David. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. This has been a bit of a long time coming, but I'm glad that we're sitting down to do this here today. And so I'm calling in from Toronto, Ontario, and yourself?
I'm out here in Phoenix, Arizona, where it is finally raining for the first time in a long time.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Love to see it. Well, David Manske, why don't we start out with hearing a little bit about yourself? So, give us the 30-second, 60-second bio. What are you working on? How'd you get into insurance? All that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I got into insurance 10 years ago after getting out of the military. Like most people, I kind of fell into it. It wasn't like I woke up one day and was like, hey, I want to be an insurance agent. I just kind of happened to have the opportunity and took it. So, been with a company called Colonial Life as an independent contractor for all of those 10 years. And now I am what would be considered a district general agent, meaning that I run a district. So, best way to look at that is if you're familiar with any agency structure, usually those are supported by a higher level of engagement. And so I would be that higher level. So I train and hire and develop insurance agencies in the voluntary benefit space. So I also do a bit of writing, and I have a course based on prospecting. Is really my main area of focus, even in the Colonial Life structure. That's where I'm strongest, is in prospecting, and that's what I talk about a lot on LinkedIn and also in my courses.
All right. Yeah. And the prospecting thing is actually how you arrived on my radar in the first place, because I feel like you take some pretty hard stances in prospecting, and you certainly have the stories and the success to earn the right to speak about it the way that you do. And we'll get into that for sure. I want to talk about how you attract clients and the things that you do to drive new pipeline. But I want to hear a little bit more about the district then. So you're doing all this hiring, you're doing all this training. How many people are in the district? How many people do you end up hiring every year? Just rough numbers here so we get a sense for that.
Sorry about that. So right now, usually the district runs anywhere from 4 to 8 agencies. I'm on a little bit more of an aggressive growth path right now. I'm looking to get that north of 10 actual agencies, and then get them staffed with varying levels of sales representatives. So it's really up to the agency how big they want to get. Typically, we like to see those agencies house at least one new person per month, or 3 per quarter is usually the standard growth rate that we want them on. So a lot of focus goes into finding people, and then really developing them and getting them successful in the industry, because we only do what we would consider in America here is a 1099 sales. So only commission based. We don't do any salary plus base or anything like that. It's all you eat what you hunt.
Yeah, yeah. So it really is a hunter's role, because if they're not killing things out there, they're not eating.
Absolutely. Like, you will starve. So, but it's definitely within our culture, and through all of my agencies. Like, if we're bringing people in, we're committing to them, right? So, we always say, like, you can love your team, you can help build them, but you can't love them if they're living underneath a bridge. So you have to make a commitment to help them get up and be successful. And we put every tool in place for them to do that. So, from myself, through the other training tools that we have with Colonial Life and the selling system that Colonial Life provides, we're pretty successful at getting people up and started.
Yeah, yeah. And those are some pretty aggressive growth numbers that you guys have for the year, but that's awesome to hear. Now, I think you said earlier that you sort of fell into insurance. I think that's a pretty common experience. It's certainly one that's common for me. Is that the case too when you're hiring out? Like, what's the split on people who have worked in the industry before versus new people?
Yeah, I'm about 1 out of every 10 that we bring in or actually have industry experience. So usually what it is like right now is a lot of people have been laid off through corporate America. And so they've had secure jobs and they just don't right now. And so there's a big push that I'm seeing in the job market, where people kind of want control over their own destiny. They want control over their own lives. And commission-based insurance role allows that. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made without having to make serious time commitments, and that's attractive to a lot of people.
Is that what was attractive to you too?
Unfortunately, I just needed a role. So I was in the military for I was in the military for a really long time, and I got two master's degrees using the GI Bill when I got out. And I was super excited, and I was like, "Man, I am going to go into corporate America. I'm going to make so much money." And I ended up being unemployed for a year. And so I kind of like I had interviewed with a bunch of insurance agencies, and I just didn't see myself doing it. But then I found Colonial, the opportunity with Colonial, and I took it because it was business to business sales. And that was something that was different from everybody else. And it was something that I could see myself doing. And so I started doing that. And then 6 months later, I'd made $63,000. And so totally changed the trajectory of my life. And that's how I ended up. So when I fell into it, I literally fell into it. It wasn't like, hey, I'll give this a chance. I didn't have any other options at the time, and so
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. And cool to hear about the military experience too. I'm curious. And how long did you spend in the military?
15 years total. So I was in the Air Force for 10 years, and then the Air Force Reserves for 5 years.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. I mean, I'm
Thank
saying this as a Canadian, but it's the Americans who keep Canada safe because we know that the Canadian military isn't doing that themselves. Shots fired. But I'm curious how your experience in the military might have actually transferred into your success that you found in the voluntary benefits market. When I talk with different folks in the industry, usually they had a career or some kind of life before they got into insurance. And I'm
you.
curious to see how that previous job or that previous vocation had transferred into skills, knowledge, approaches, mindset, that sort of thing. So, is there anything that you can pinpoint as, yeah, this is very much because of the 15 years that I spent in the military?
Yeah, so a lot of it's discipline. Like I think that's the biggest thing is that like discipline it plays a huge part of it. The military is based um, on discipline and repetitive processes, right? I mean, that's really the key to success. So there's that. But also like when you look at, and not to take it to an extreme, but like people aren't shooting at you when you're going out and prospecting businesses, right? And so like it may feel that way for some people, and I'm not saying that prospecting isn't always the sunshine and roses, but it's when you've overcome so many other challenges in your previous careers, when the biggest challenge is like, hey, I have to walk through this door and go talk to this person that could potentially give me money. It's just it doesn't have the same, things are just a little bit easier. The perspective's a little bit easier to take.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. And honestly, this is one of those times where the connection is so clear between what you're saying in your previous role and how it's helped you in your insurance career. That idea of process, discipline, doing the repetitive thing, which is oftentimes, it seems, the unattractive thing to be successful in insurance, but really the only thing that will get you there in the long run.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, it's really, can you execute on a process? I mean, it's really learning how to do something really well and then doing it and getting better at it, but then just really knowing how to do something really well. And that's what prospecting really is when you come down to it. That's what the basics of insurance sales are in general, is just you set up a process, or most of the people that you're going to be around have one that you can borrow, which is the beautiful thing about it. It's not like you have to reinvent the wheel, right? You raise your hand and someone's like, this is how you go sell insurance. Right, because we're all willing to like avoid the mistakes that we went through. So right. So that's what I think is really key, is just if you just are disciplined enough to develop a process and then go execute it, right? Put it on your calendar and go do it, and have honest conversations with yourself about how much you actually did, and not trick yourself into thinking that you did a lot when you really just sat in the parking lot for an hour. So
And I think it's interesting that you've had sort of two main roles that we've talked about here. You got in as a pure producer, pure prospecting, growing your own sales, and now you're in this position of management and leadership where you're bringing people in, training them on those processes. So, at the end of the day, I imagine when they come see you, it's almost like walking into the principal's office sometimes because they know that they haven't been up to any good. They know they haven't been executing, and since you've been there already, you can sniff through that, right? You can kind of sniff if somebody's not really putting the work in.
Yeah, and I would hope we never like I mean, yes, that there is that reality sometimes, but I just hope that we never get to that point organizationally. I talk to my people in the mornings, I talk to them in the afternoons. You're not getting through a day without me talking to you at some point about how your day's going, about what you're doing, and any challenges that you might be having. And so, in that regard, like I would believe I would know if somebody was having trouble before they end up on my radar for something that isn't good, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess that comes from experience too, just knowing the red flags and how to get in front of something before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's through our development process, we know where they're going to experience pain. You know, we know that, your first week out there is great. Like it's everyone just talking to people and everything. And it's all hunky dory. And then you get into week two, and now you have to balance being out talking to people, running client meetings, and then scheduling follow up with the people that you met with the last week. And so now instantly you went from, oh man, I had all this time to do all this to like, ooh, that's it's going to get busy here, And so we know that, so we can coach through it. And that's the same reason that all of our agency leaders run the same path that a new sales rep would run as well. So you're not going to get into fully, leading an agency or building an agency unless you've gone through exactly what the people that you're leading have gone through to experience it, right? Because how good of a coach are you going to be if you're coaching something that you didn't run?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's that whole, especially when you spend time on LinkedIn and these other places, you see a lot of theoretical salespeople. You see a lot of
Mhm.
theoretical sales coaches and gurus where, if you've been there and done that, you can detect that there's something not quite right. That you just, I don't know, maybe it's just myself, but I get this almost like a pit in my stomach that says, I don't think this person actually knows what they're talking about.
I would agree with you. A seller will always know a seller. Like you'll
Yeah.
be able to sell them, and even like we kind of joke a little bit on our side because like we don't have leads provided for us, right? So like we hunt everything, and so like we'll come across people that are salespeople, but maybe they have a sales development rep or a business development rep that hunts their leads and brings them to them, and it's all warm and cozy by the time it gets there. We're like, it's a totally different side of sales. We're not even in the same language here. So
Yeah. So you and your people, you run full sales cycle. They're doing everything from soup to nuts.
kind of. So we have enrollment teams that meet with the employees, so they don't have to actually like enroll an actual employee. And then we have back end techs that build out the enrollment platform and tech platform that we use. And those same people also typically manage all of our claims and things like that. So for the most part, they are running the full cycle though. So they just have help in different, like they have help with enrollment and they have help with what we would call coordination.
Right. But that stuff happens after the sale?
Yeah. So basically,
Yeah.
once they get a yes from a business owner, so it's sales cycle is pretty simple. So prospect, meet with a business owner. If they're small enough, we do one meeting because we have a turnkey solution we can bring in. If they have some more complex needs, then we'll do a second meeting with a full proposal and do that. But once we get a yes, they sign on the dotted line. Um, then we set up an enrollment, and our team comes out, meets with employees for 15 to 20 minutes each. They get to make elections if they would like to. They don't have to. Um, well, unless there's some employer paid products, then they do have to make elections on those. But if it's just voluntary, they just hear what we have to say, get educated. Education is the number one thing that we do. And then that's over. Our team gets paid, and we get payroll deduction reports to the client, help them get set up on their HRIS platform that we provide them with, and then we ask them for referrals.
Amazing. Amazing. I guess this is a good time to maybe ask you to expand a little bit on the voluntary benefit space that you're in. And what I'd like to do is actually, if you can give a briefer on that, right? And what it is you're really selling, what are the problems that you're actually solving with that? And then if
Mm-hmm.
you could tie that into your ideal clients, because I think I get the sense that although you can sell to anybody and everybody, you don't necessarily do that. You might have different focuses or different disciplines within that. So if you could just tease that out, voluntary benefits, give us the primer on that, and then connect that to the clients that you serve and the problems that you help them solve.
Yeah, absolutely. So voluntary benefits are pretty much just everything employee benefit wise minus 401k and minus health insurance is the easiest way to look at it. Specifically, dental, vision, short-term disability, long-term disability, accident, cancer policies, critical illness, hospital confinement, and then term and whole life. And so what these benefits do is they allow a business owner, so we can go in with an employer contribution or without an employer contribution, which is kind of unique on where we can fit into the benefit space. So an employer doesn't need to fund these programs if they don't want to. If they do, it's an affordable spend, usually between $20 to $50 per employee per month. Like, it really not breaking the bank. And the benefits themselves usually start around $5 a week, so they're pretty affordable on the employee level. So what our benefits are going to do in terms of helping a business owner, so they're going to help the business attract and retain employees. Okay. So they're going to bring in the people that they want, and they're going to help them keep the people that they got. And then they're going to do that and save really on the employer's bottom line, because employee turnover is expensive no matter how we look at it. So that's really what we do for businesses. And then for employees, we help them by answering one of two questions. So if an employee gets seriously sick or injured, they're going to ask, one, am I going to be okay? And then two, how am I going to pay for it? So voluntary benefits answer that second question, is how am I going to pay for it? No one should ever have to make a decision between paying a mortgage or paying a medical bill. And that's the space that we fit in. So we help employers by taking care of their employees, and we give them a platform of benefits that they can hire on and then retain people with. And then, so to your point, like, who do we like? We like everybody. You said that. Who do we really like? We like people in construction that do dangerous things on the weekends for fun. It really, really, if we niche it down, we like trades are always nice. Wholesale trade is good. Manufacturing is good. But those are the places that we like to be. But we'll be everywhere. We could be in restaurants. We can be in home healthcare. Home healthcare is a huge expanding industry. So,
Hmm.
we do a lot there too. Just really, if there's need for us, we got a team out there. We got plenty of teams out there trying to find you. So raise your hand if you need us, because we'll find
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. And just a quick one, I guess, Canada, America, like, we're pretty close, obviously, geographically, culturally too, in a lot of ways. But one thing really stood out to me. You said niche. And I think that's one way to say it. Up here in Canada, it might just be the French influence that we have here. I'm so close to Quebec. I always call it niche. So,
I think you're right. I just am stubborn, and I'm like, I'm just gonna call it. I'm just gonna call it what I call it. So
but you know what? Niche rhymes with rich, which is kind of
yeah,
nice. Niches
yes,
doesn't really rhyme with anything.
true, very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. No, that's great. You also said, construction companies who have employees who like to do fun, risky things on the weekend. I feel like there's so many stories I could ask you about that. Do you have one that comes to mind?
So I represented a group of people that they worked on oil rigs up in the northern Arctic Circle of Alaska, right? So that's what their profession was. So they would do roughly 6 months here, 6 months there, and just cycle back and forth. And so one of their guys, they had two cool injuries out of there. So one guy fell off a mechanical pole, completely sober, I'm sure, and he fell off a mechanical bull and shattered his leg in 3 places, and that ended up being a pretty expensive claim that he got. And another one was riding a dirt bike out in California and took a jump and separated himself in the air from the dirt bike, and then like broke both of his legs on the way down. So those are the two that stick out. Particularly because the business was unique in itself and what they did. But then, yeah, they like to have fun. So those guys had a good time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, hobbies that I don't partake in, but I can see the appeal for sure. Is It'll keep you guys in business for a long time. The more people do
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. So maybe that's the plug. Go out and ride your dirt bike, everybody. Just make sure that your business owner knows that there's voluntary benefits available for that.
right. Well, where I live in Arizona, like we don't really necessarily always have the nice cars. It's got the expensive trucks and the four wheelers in the garage, and the side by sides and all that stuff. So it's kind of the culture out here. Get out and you got this big old desert with nothing else to do with it. So people make jumps and go off road and have fun. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. Why don't we talk a little bit about prospecting? I know you have a lot to say about that. We've got also this niche or this niche that you've talked about. You do really well in construction, a couple other kind of different clients that you work with too. How do you find them? How do you bring them into your pipeline? What are the things that you do maybe on the very front end, right? So what is it at the activity level? How do you generate new pipeline today?
So what we teach is a very, very rapid pipeline build. So to put it in perspective, when we have somebody that comes and works with us as a sales rep or as an agency leader, whatever it happens to be, we need to get them paid pretty quickly, right? Like people can't go 3 months without income. It's not realistic. So we're looking to get people selling and have sales under their belt inside of the first 30 days. And I know you and I were talking about it pre-show. One of the most important aspects of that is that they actually make the sale themselves, right? And so we're under a lot of pressure, not pressure, but we have to have a system that's able to produce competent sales reps in a fast time where they are able to be at least independent enough to be client facing and confident enough to be client facing, right? And so to do that, what we do is we start them with a very, very rapid pipeline build. And so there's a couple different ways you can go about this. A lot of people like to pre-qualify leads. I'm not a proponent of pre-qualification. I prefer to qualify on the spot. So what we do is we find an area and we go in and we talk to every single business in the area. And we walk in and just say, hey, I'm David. I'm a local business owner. I run an independent agency with Colonial Life. I would like to get on your calendar, talk about how we could help each other grow. And invariably they go, what do you do? And then we say, well, we help businesses with employee benefits. You got some time next week? I'd love to come out. And they say yes or no. And they might have some objections, which is fine. If we don't get the appointment, we will take note of the objection, right? We write everything down. Documentation is key on this. So we document it, and then we're going to come back and see them next week. Okay. And because truthfully, there's a good chance that they didn't even know what I was talking about when I was in talking to them. I interrupted their day, and I was an unfamiliar person that they just didn't feel like talking to at that moment. And that's okay. I've been there, and I sell stuff, and I try not to be that person, but I've still been that person. So that's what we do. We go into about 100 businesses in a first week or per week. If we didn't get a chance to meet the decision maker, we'll call them on Monday to see if we can connect with the decision maker. Usually send an email after every interaction. And then, like I said, we go right back in there the week after. And after that, then we kind of triage out the lead and put it in whatever stage of elevation we think it's at. Like if it's a hot lead, we'll go visit it weekly. If it's not so hot, we'll visit it monthly to every 6 weeks or so. But that's how we build pipeline, and we build it fast. And we see a lot of success with it. So that's the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. At first, I got to say, you ruffled my feathers a little bit because you said, we don't do a lot of pre qualifying, we qualify on the spot. And my inner sales snob, my inner prospecting snob, has been in that position before where I've just been given a list that said, just go talk to somebody. And I think to myself, I'm going to be wasting my time on at least 50% of these people. Now, granted, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here because as you went and explained the system, it makes sense because you can sell to anybody and everybody. You do well in certain niches. But as long as you've got this machinery, right, this clockwork, this system where you're actually hitting these places multiple times and you're able to churn through them quick enough where you're still building pipeline and qualifying in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and it's the system that matters. The alternative to what would happen in that scenario if you didn't have a system is spray and pray. You'd literally be going into 100 businesses, and you might walk out with 5 appointments, but that's statistically what it is, right? Like 5% of your clientele is low hanging fruit and ready to buy right now. The other 95% is where the money's at. And they're the ones that we have to nurture through the pipeline and elevate through the process. And so if we're not focused on the 95%, we literally walk in and we take the low hanging fruit and we're happy. And then our salespeople burn out because that's all that they're ever doing is hunting for low hanging fruit. And it's frustrating. And you don't get to see the true rewards of prospecting, which is leads that start to just fall out of nowhere because you've been working on them for so long that, you just get, you have your forecasted sales, but then, oh my, look at these two others that just fell in my lap this week because I've been working them for 3 months and they were finally ready to go, and those are, to me, that's the best part of the whole cycle is getting that return on investment from, earlier in the year.
Yeah, I love to hear you say that because it seems like so often people have such a short-term view of this, or they have such short-term memories where, every quarter that they're in is the only quarter that's ever happened. Okay, Q1 kind of sucked. Now I'm in Q2. Okay, now this is brand new, fresh start. Give me a list, give me something to work with. So they might look at something that they know they won't close in Q1 and then not focus on it at all, not prioritize the reach outs, not prioritize trying to learn the business, know who's who over there, not try to establish that first interaction point. But I think what you're describing really contrasts that because you're saying, hey, we're hitting everybody all the time, all throughout the year. And before we know it, work that I did, maybe 10 quarters ago ends up in a sale today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really it. I mean, so we have a magic number that we strive to. So we look for 220 qualified leads in a pipeline. That's what we want. And that, if you think about it, like qualified, like we know them, we're working with them. That's a lot of leads to have at any given time, right? But once they get to that point, all it is just, managing those relationships, and then you only have to add in what you close or what moves out, what you decided to disqualify finally. And so your cold marketing is maybe like 10 businesses a week, possibly. But at that point, you're probably already bringing in that amount of qualified leads on referrals alone or networking or anything like that. And so it just really, we want to work from a mentality of abundance. Like I want my teams to be so plentiful in their pipeline that when something cancels, like when an appointment cancels on them, it's not the end of the world. It's actually like a great day. They're like, oh my gosh, I can go get lunch now. This is awesome. Right. Like I can take a break. Like I can you know what? I'm just going to pull over in my car and sit here and enjoy quiet for a half hour because I just want to, and I have the pipeline to support it, And so that's the level of abundance that I want my teams to see. And that's what we train for and what we teach for is just have so much going that if something falls off, it's a blessing, not a curse.
Hmm. Yeah, and just hearing the machinery that you've put in place, like the systems, the sales systems, the pipeline building system, it seems pretty fine tuned, which makes me think that you probably try to avoid as many wasteful activities as possible. I know everybody tries to do that, but I imagine that you actually go one step further and pinpoint it. I'm curious to hear in your perspective, what prospecting or pipeline building activities do you think are a waste of time?
So like I say, when I say pre-qualifying, like it's not like for the way that it's described in our industry is like you call up and you ask for the business owner, you ask for if they're still local, if they're still, and to me, like then you basically make the same call or you show up in person and try and like somehow keep the gatekeeper from knowing that you were just on the phone with them last week pre-qualifying them, right? And so like I don't do that with my teams, and I know there's probably some sales trainers that are listening to this that are probably going to call me here and have a conversation regarding that. But I just, so that's one area I've cut out. Anything, we're very quick to identify disqualified leads. So like where we could potentially work an out of state lead, we're not going to. We're going to abandon it because it's not. Logistically, it's just not feasible. So those are the main things. Identify who you can actually work with, and don't lie to yourself about a lead becoming something that it's not, because it never will. So just those two aspects right there are probably the best. And then the second thing that we really hone in on is redundancy in the CRM systems. So I had previously had an experience as a sales rep where it took me almost 8 hours a week to document the activity that I was doing. And it was actually so much of a deterrence that I would stop doing activity because I didn't want to have to document the fact that I was doing the activity. It was like, so that was a big eye-opening experience for me. So in the beginning, there's a little overlap because they don't actually have immediate access to the Colonial Life CRM system. So we have to do paper records in the beginning, and then there's like one day where they have to upload everything into the CRM system. So, but outside of that initial pain point, everything is contained so they can really do either on the spot annotations or very easily, take a voice note with their phone and transition that at the end of the night. And so by reducing that overburdening CRM process, just have got really, really effective in the field.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that, honestly. And when you said in the beginning you were spending 8 hours a week just doing CRM, that guts me because that's a full day you
Mhm.
could have been selling gone to just playing around with an app, right? Or playing around with technology. Really a glorified spreadsheet a lot of the time, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I read some research a few years ago. I wonder what it looks like now, but it said that a salesperson spends just about 34% of their time actually doing sales activities. The rest of it are, useless internal meetings, updating the CRM, doing things like research and, technical training and all this stuff. So just a third of their day or a third of their week is spent actually doing sales activity. So then we spin our wheels and we wonder why our pipelines don't look the way that we know they should. We wonder why commission checks aren't as big as we want them to be. And really, it's because there's such a huge misallocation of the time that we're spending.
Absolutely. Like I heard an idea earlier in the year, and it's something that I've adopted with my teams. But so when we do call blocks, right? So we do focused calls like in a specific time on the calendar. So it's in that Monday morning after a Monday morning meeting before lunch, because that's not really good client facing time. And if you just let people do their own devices, they'll be planning, right? They'll be planning for the day.
Researching.
Um, researching, right? Well, so to your point though, um, someone told me, he's like, yeah, I have my people write out the people that they're going to call on a piece of paper because otherwise they'll be on their computer researching instead of dialing. And he's like, we get in like double the dials because they're just going off of a piece of paper rather than being like, oh, what's the phone number for so and so's tire shop? And so, um, yeah, to your point, like those things, those things happen. So, just I thought it was a really low tech way to avoid a really cool or a really prevalent problem.
Yeah, that's really smart. I'm working with a client right now. It's a PNC brokerage, and they've got four frontline people who they really want to pick up their outbound calling, their prospecting, because that's one of those things that they've left on the shelf. They don't really focus on it too much. So when it's the last thing you think about, it's the first thing that slips through the cracks. And one of the things that we've talked about time and time again is eliminate the amount of time between calls as much as possible, because the habit that they have that we finally broken is, okay, I've got my CRM, I've got my record in front of me. I make the call, I document it, and then I pull up another CRM record. I want to see a little bit more about their business. I want to understand the household a little better. So then I do all this research before I make the call, and boom, I ended up in voicemail anyway. So what was the point of all that research? So now what they do is they have the list done before the calling even starts. So there's not that, swivel chair kind of moving things around and playing on this screen and that screen. It's like, no, this is it. It's just a list in front of me. It's 20 names, and these are the 20 names I'm going through for the next half an hour, 45 minutes, and I've got a phone, and that's it. No other distractions.
I love it. I love it. It's spot on. I mean, it's not that it's not human nature. You want to know who you're calling, but the reality is that you could go into that call. First off, my teams should know who they're calling. They should have some background on because they physically walked down to the business at some point and have been in boots on the ground. So, it's and I get wanting to brush up on notes. I just think sometimes I always favor action, right? So I think you've seen a lot of what I write and how I'm going to go about things. Like I am action above everything. Like just start moving, things will happen in your favor, right? Create movement, changes perspective, perspective changes, everything.
Yeah, and this might be a bit of a controversial take. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. I don't know. Uh, but I think doing, I should be careful here, but I think doing even a little bit of research on a lead before you call them is overrated. I think I'll flesh this out, then you can respond to it. But I think if you have enough of the same kinds of conversations over and over again, and you see the same kind of use cases and the same kind of business scenarios, and you talk with enough people, the patterns get formed in your mind, and you're able to on a phone call actually direct it where it needs to go. Because at the end of the day, if we try to personalize the prospecting too much, in my view, we just get so trapped because we feel like we have to go off script, like we're not going to be talking about the same type of value of the solution. We have to make it so customized and modified when really at the end of the day, our solution solves a certain set of problems, and there's only so many different sets of people that you can be selling to. So you do this enough, you can actually reduce the amount of time spent researching or thinking about the call before you make it. So I'm going to say researching at all can be quite overrated.
Yeah, and I can see your point too. And Jim Camp, legendary negotiator, he comes in with a theory of blank slate, right? Like, you know kind of what you're doing as far as who you're contacting and what your agenda is, but really going into things with a blank slate so you can actually listen to what the client is saying and be able to not have a preconceived notion as to where you're gonna drive them, right? And so I think to your point, I think there's a lot of value in that mentality. And so, and certainly you see us do it when we're talking about walking into businesses, because those first 100 they walk into, we just walk in, right? We're going to walk
Yeah.
in, we're going to ask, we're going to introduce ourselves. And, people ask like, hey, what's the trick to prospecting? It's literally just activity and being curious. I mean, it's really,
Yeah.
and obviously, like we talked about earlier, having a system, but just doing the activity and being curious while you're doing it, knowing to ask just enough questions and possibly one more.
Yep. Yep. And I like what you said before too, where you disproportionately favor action. So do the action, get the reps in. And to me, in my mind, I would rather somebody fail because they're doing too much, right? They're doing too many activities, they're burning themselves out. I would rather them fail because they're spending so much time doing prospecting without doing the researching in between than somebody who's so paralyzed through all the analytical stuff and all the analyzing that they forget to pick up the phone, right? It's all this research, it's all this thinking and planning, and they just don't end up doing it. Of those two people, I'll take the guy who's making the dials and not reading the record 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. And I mean, we were talking about pre-show, like the growth trajectory that I have for the district and building agencies. And it's because I take the same approach into recruiting and people development, right? Like that's my new area of prospecting. And so I just create action, and I'm going to go with abundance because I know abundance creates really good mentalities. And if I get stuck, I'll raise my hand and ask for help, and
Yep.
we'll figure it out from there. But I figure as long as I'm on the side of too much, then what do I fall to enough? Like, okay, well,
Exactly.
I'll be okay.
I love that. I want to segue a little bit here. You have a course that you built. You built it last year, and I think if memory serves, you kind of had to revamp it, the whole thing from start to finish at some point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so I have. It's called Prosper. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off there?
no, it's
We
okay. I was
closed
just
for
gonna
a
say,
second.
yeah, no problem. So, you pull the course together, Prospect Genius. I took the course. I loved it. As somebody who actually enjoys doing prospecting because I learned how to prospect. Once you know how to prospect, it's actually kind of fun, or it can be. I took the course.
Mhm.
I thought it was great. There, I'll get you to talk a little bit more about it, and its design and its structure. But what I really wanted to focus in on was my favorite part of the course, and that was learning about the birds.
So the birds, yeah. So Prospect Genius, it was a reimagined product out of. At one point, we had digitized the products that we use for bringing people on board in the insurance industry, and so after talking for 6 months on LinkedIn with other people in the cold calling space, I was like, man, there's like not a lot of people that are taking prospecting where it needs to be taken to. And really what I'm talking about is triaging your leads, developing contact cadences based on where they fall in your funnel, and following them through your sales funnel, right? Like we mentioned at the beginning, like so many times people are like, just spray and pray and be done. And anyway, so that's what the course is designed to avoid. Now, to your point, the birds is fun. So the birds is a way of identifying a seller or buyer's personality type based on their characteristics. So you have four birds. You have eagles, parrots, doves, and owls. So eagles are more of your dominant personality type. So you see it a lot in selling. A lot of business owners are eagles. And when you engage, let me just backtrack. So the overall purpose of identifying personality traits and then associating them with birds is, one, it's really fun. It's kind of cool because you took the course. Do you start to kind of see people as different birds and identify with them?
Almost instantly. And when I was going through the course, when I'm, going through your video content and reading the PDF, people's names were popping into my head. I started to think, oh man, like, John is an eagle, or, this person is a parrot. Just it was crazy how that started to form as you got deeper into it.
Yeah, and so once you start to identify with it, you start seeing it, then you start engaging with people differently, right? And so like if somebody is an eagle, you're not going to go up to them as a dove who's a very caring personality and be like, "Let me nurture you through the sales process," because that is not going to work for you, right? So you kind of got to meet them at the bird type that they are. So if you're looking at if you're looking at it from a buyer seller standpoint, an eagle's going to want, informed decisions, but they're going to want quick decisions. So don't bore them with a bunch of detail that they're not going to want to listen to, and just get to the point. And so I teach birds is almost always one of the first trainings that I give outside of just a general prospecting training, just because it's so fun. And then also we have the actual assessment. So we actually take it internally, and so we can identify each other. And from a leadership standpoint, it's great because I have to know how to engage with the agencies and the agents, because like if somebody's a dove, like I have to be more supportive, and I'm very eagle, by the way. So for me to coach a dove, I have to get on a dove level and be very supportive of what they need. Or if I have, say, a parrot, parrots are the life of the party. And so if I bore a parrot, they're going to check out of that conversation real quick. And so I have to be able to turn around and keep parrots interested, keep them fun, keep them happy. And that's how we do things. So very, very fun aspect to selling, in my opinion.
Which type of bird is the best kind of salesperson?
It depends. Sellers can be in all types of sales situations. So I have at least one of each type either on my team or coming onto my team. The one I think that requires the most coaching, I think, is probably the owl. And it's not because they're bad. They're really good. They just suffer paralysis by analysis a lot. And so we just have to, when we're talking about the ones that want all the details or something, before they go act. So we have to be a little bit more conscious of moving them out into the field and getting them up and running.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So, this is probably a good place to end, David. So, where can people learn more about Prospect Genius? Where can they get their hands on it?
Yeah,
Where can they?
so the links up.
Sorry, where can they learn which bird they are and how to sell like birds?
Yeah, absolutely. So go to Prospect Genius. I'm sorry, Branded Business Solutions and Prospect Genius. That's the easiest place to get it. You can go to my LinkedIn profile, has a link to it as well. And if you want, you can always check out, I have a newsletter called The Prospector that comes out every week, that really has just actionable tips on how to build your business and focuses a lot on cold calling, mindset, mentality, and how to build your business as far as a seller. So if you want to hear me speak every week, that's the place to do it. But definitely appreciate you having me, David.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Mr. Mansky. It's been an honor.